Well, if you don't mind, you'll make an equation and see if after several little Zenisms we can come up with an answer. And the equation is mind plus the place where stillness and movement meet, plus emptiness. What do they equal? It was a time in the Zen monastery when they were expecting a very great festival, and it was the head monk's task to adorn the meditation hall. And the head monk took his tasks very seriously, so he was bustling around. And he took a pot plant, and he went into the meditation hall where the master was sitting in contemplation, and he hurried over to him and did a salutation and said, Master, where would you like me to put the pot plant? And the master looked up at him and said, drop it. So the head monk dropped the pot plant and looked askance at the master, and the master said, drop it. The head monk said, but I already dropped it. The master said, drop it. Oh, said the head monk, bowed his head low on the floor in front of the master and picked up the pot plant, and off he went. And then there was the student, the master, who came to the master and said, Master, I'm terribly troubled. My mind is so agitated. I don't seem to have any power and control over the thoughts in my mind. The master took him by the hand and took him outside and said, open your cloak and let the wind blow through. So the student opened his cloak, and then with the furrow on his brow he said, I can't. The master said, well then, you better stand still and brace yourself against the wind. Then another student came to question the Zen master, and he said, Master, if I have a lot of thoughts in my mind, what should I do? And the master said, well, toss them out. The student said, well, what about if I have nothing in my mind? The master said, well, carry it out. And then there's a story told before of the seeker who longed to have the presence of the great Tibetan master Ashoka appear to him, because he felt that this was his chosen ideal and that he would finally reach that epitome, an apex of realization if he could see this master in front of him. So he went up to the mountain and he meditated. He meditated for 12 long years, but Ashoka did not appear to him. So, very disheartened, he went down the mountain and with a great sigh walked along the road. But then he saw a man on the side of the road with a stone, and he was rubbing the stone with a piece of cloth. He went over to the man and said, what are you doing? And the man said, oh, I'm making a needle because I'm a tailor and I want to make a needle out of this piece of stone. Well, the seeker looked and said, not in this lifetime is this man going to be able, and yet he's still continuing with his task, and I've given up. So, with great resolution, he went back up the mountain again, and he meditated for another 12 years. And still Ashoka did not appear in front of him. So again, with a heavy heart, he went down the mountain again. But there he came across a man who was digging a mountain. And he asked the man, "What are you doing?" And the man said, "Well, this is my house in front of the mountain, and the mountain is blocking my way between the village and my house, and I'm moving the mountain." So the seeker said, "This man's never going to move this mountain in his lifetime. And look at me, I've given up my task." So he went back up the mountain again, sat for another 12 years, and still Ashoka didn't appear in front of him. So he came down the mountain, but this time it was gone. He was totally desolate, with his head held low, in total abjection, having absolutely given up his longing to see the Master. He walked along the road, but as he was walking he heard faint cries, and when he looked, there was a mangy dog with maggots crawling, eating its innards and its back legs. And yet, as he went to walk past, the dog, according to its nature, started to bark at him. A great wave of compassion filled him, and he felt he had to save this dog. Well, there's a little story related to that which you've heard before. But in bending down and attempting to alleviate the suffering of this dog, all of a sudden he felt himself in great light. And when he looked up, there was Ashoka, the great saint, God, standing in front of him, and said, "I've now been able to appear to you because in your emptiness you were filled with compassion." So the story goes on. And the last little story is that story of the man who longed with all his heart for enlightenment, to be enlightened so that he could go out into the world and help all beings. And it so happened that a great Zen master was coming to town. So he travelled to see this master, and after waiting his turn in the long queue that had lined up to be in the presence of this great being, he came to him, begged him, and said, "I long to be enlightened. I longed to be able to have the wisdom to teach mankind. What should I do?" The Zen master said, "You must go to the mountain, find yourself a cave, and sit there in meditation. I will give you a mantra to recite." So the seeker after enlightenment did just this. With his mantra, he went up the mountain and found his cave, and he sat there for 20 long years. But no enlightenment came. But then it came to him that the master was coming back. So he made his way from his cave down the mountain, and again lined up with all the others seeking the presence of the Master. And when it was his turn, he said to the Master, "Master, I did what you told me for 20 long years, and still I haven't attained enlightenment." "Oh," said the Master, "what did I tell you to do?" And the seeker said, "Well, you told me to go to mountain and meditate, and you gave me the... Oh, said the master, that's terribly wrong. Oh, I gave you absolutely the wrong. Oh, that's terribly wrong. Oh, I'm so sorry. You'll never be enlightened in this lifetime now. Well, of course, the seeker was absolutely devastated. Devastated. But what could you do? Hopeless. Nothing. So he went back to his cave and he thought, what am I going to do now? I don't know anything else. So he just sat in meditation and intoned his mantra, and within moments he was enlightened. He got up, he went out of his cave, looked down at the village below. He'd seen this village so many times before, but it looked entirely different. And he knew that he had all that he needed to fulfill the task of bringing enlightenment, wisdom, and guidance to mankind as he set out down the mountain. So, what arises out of these Zenism and these anecdotes as an answer to our equation? There we go, answer.
The dark is out.
Mind plus the place where stillness and movement meet, plus emptiness. What do they equal for us?
It seems that they take you to a place, those three take you to a place of complete surrender, which in itself is the gate to the gateway.
Gateless gate, you call it. Gateless gate, Zen.
Oh, is there a gateless gate in Zen, is there?
There is indeed.
Oh, how
Gateless
about that? I didn't know that.
Well, Mona Nesruden has one too. But as we can see, and the picture that comes, of course, is when we make this equation, that first of all, we might end it with a question mark. But although at this very moment we do not verbalize or give expression to the answer, there's no more question mark there, is there? The question mark doesn't exist. And that's so. So we have the answer. And that in itself is what these stories have been indicating, isn't it? There's no... What is it? When we take out all desire, take out all expectation, what remains? Knowing that there's no such thing as emptiness or a void. As soon as it's created, it's filled. Isn't it so? And since life is always filling that space, do you see? It's there, isn't it?
It sort of moves you to the place of non-resistance to what is.
Yes.
So that only when you're in that place of non-resistance, you've gone through that gateway,
Yes.
can you truly experience it. And then from there comes the flowering
Absolutely. That is, yes,
of the blossom.
that's right.
The fruit drops.
Yes. The ground of unknowing from which the rose always blooms, as the Sufis say. So we're always in that equation, in that space where we're in that ground of unknowing. And always there is that which blooms out of it. It's the nature of life, isn't it? The responses, the answers, what we need to do. So mind and its activities, mind and its ferment, mind and its... Is the pot ever off the boil? Is it? Sometimes the flame is higher and it's bubbling, steam coming out.
Sometimes it's a simmer.
Sometimes it's simmering away there.
Sometimes it's when it looks like the least is what's happening is the most is
Most is
happening.
what's happening. That's right.
Can I share an experience that happened
Oh,
for
good.
us on Sunday? Because it sort of relates to this. I told Pat briefly this morning that Gabriel's been writing and producing this book on blurb.com, and for the second time she rang us up on Saturday night and said, my computer screen's gone completely black, I can't access the program's stuck in the computer, and she'd put months of work and all the photos and everything were in it. And so the next morning our Sunday meditation was to get up early and be down in town by 7 o'clock tomorrow. 7 o'clock, so Gabriel could get to a meeting to do with the book. And Eckhart took the computer out and started working, and we basically said on the way down, Eckhart said, what if we just imagined that this was absolutely perfect and absolutely whatever happened was going to be the right thing. Just imagine if we have no resistance to it. Let's sort of pretend. So we went, okay. And I said, well, whatever it takes, we'll get this book. We'll do whatever it takes to get the book going. So we discovered that the computer wasn't dead, but the screen was. So we rat-a-tat-tatted, word for the day, a la Miranda, on the door of some friends of ours and asked to use a computer screen. That didn't work. Eckhart spent 4 hours with a torch looking at the screen, trying to get the cursor to work, to save this work that was in the computer onto a hard drive. And he was so patient. In the meanwhile, our friend fed us and gave us breakfast and all this stuff. And Eckhart, meanwhile, just kept on going and kept on going and kept on going. And I'd look over at him and I'd go, oh gosh, you know, he's so patient. He just goes into this space, you know. And it went on and on and on, and he was going, I don't think I can do this. I don't think this is going to happen. And he had to go back to zero and start all over again, and because he'd saved it the wrong way the first time, so then he had to do it again. And anyway, meanwhile, of course, Marion was working on Plan B, trying to find computer experts, you know, what one could do. And we said, look, we'll have to go. How about we pack the computer? Eckhart just said, can't do this. This is not, can't do this. And I thought, this is when it's going to happen. And within 5 seconds, the whole thing had worked. And it saved the whole program.